And are you in Nebraska right now? Sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
Omaha?
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Lincoln, okay, cool.
Yep.
Okay.
So, where are you all at, by the way? I know where Lebo's at.
Yeah, we're all over. I'm in San Francisco. So
Okay.
it's,
Boston.
yeah,
Awesome. Good deal.
coast to coast.
Yeah, no kidding. Welcome to the Most Podern podcast, where we establish convening power in the built environment. Today, our guest is Zach, an architect and the founder of Layer. Layer is a software platform that tackles the unique challenges of working with spatial data. Today, we'll hear the story of how Zach went from being an architect to building software for the building industry. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, it's good to see y'all.
And of course, we have our other host, Minku,
Hi.
Alex.
What's up, everyone?
Hello.
Cool. Zach, so you're a licensed architect who spent the early part of your career in architecture. Can you give us a little bit of background on what first drew you to architecture?
So I decided I wanted to be an architect, I think when I was 10 or 12, somewhere in there. I remember drawing elaborate floor plans of my future homes. I really fell in love with it, with the idea of drawing and planning. And then I think I ended up taking a CAD class in high school, and I was hooked after that. I like to say that I don't think I would be an architect if computers didn't exist, because I have terrible handwriting and I'm terrible at drawing, so by hand anyway. So I think computers definitely played a big part in my decision to move down the architecture path. But
That's actually exactly the same with me. I often say I can't draw at all. And it's really when I encountered the tool of the drafting board. So like actually being able to draw a straight line without my own hand-eye coordination. And then naturally the computer kind of aided that even more. Was that something for you that you encountered it and it was like a new experience that you could kind of a power that you unlocked?
yes, yeah, for sure. So I remember jumping into AutoCAD. I think actually my first encounter with CAD was Inventor, I'm pretty sure. And I remember for a project, like diving in and making like, I forget, it was like a pedal submarine or something crazy like that. But just like, it really unlocked a lot in my head. Like, wow, like I can like express everything that's going on up here in my mind and like actually create it digitally. And that felt really powerful. So, yeah, I don't think I have terrible lettering. Can't draw at all. My daughter draws way better than I do. So
That's awesome. I think this theme of the creativity that computers unlocks for you is going to be a common thread throughout this conversation.
Yep.
So I think moving into Layer, Layer kind of has its roots in a problem that you encountered while working on an architecture project. Can you tell us a little bit about what made that project so hard that you had to take the hard road of building custom software for it?
Yeah, definitely. So it all started, I was practicing architecture at a small Midwest firm here in Nebraska. And up until that point, I had always been fascinated with parametric design, very proficient in tools like Grasshopper and Dynamo. And typically I was finding ways to use those tools to build solutions for different problems I'd run into on a project.
So
that
just
was
a quick pause. Can you explain what parametric tools are for those listeners who might not be as familiar?
Yeah. So Grasshopper and Dynamo were both what most would call like visual scripting tools, and it's basically gives you the ability to connect nodes and like visually program or script connected to a 3D modeling software like Rhino or Revit. Parametric modeling specifically, I think, is derived from the word parameter, which essentially like relies on a function and allows you to modify a parameter to generate some unique result. So I think that's kind of what it's derived from. But like tools like Revit are parametric tools as well. But I guess I should say like the tools I was typically using were visual scripting platforms that were connected to tools like Revit or Rhino.
So how did, I guess, your experience with parametric tools lead you into coding for real?
So like I prior to, I think my sixth year of architecture school, I went into my thesis, again, being really proficient in visual scripting tools, but not really having a ton of coding background. And my thesis I decided to do on data-driven architecture. And so it was really focused on like how data could drive actual form and function of a building. And so I really spent that whole year just diving deep into programming. I think I read every Stack Overflow answer. I doubt it, but I read a lot online debugging problems and building software that essentially allowed me to collect data and generate architecture from that data. So I'd say like that's when I really developed a lot of those skills around programming. But when I went into full-time practice, those were skills I continued to kind of hone through building, custom solutions to problems I was encountering on a project. A few examples of that, like I worked on a small meeting center in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska. This it sat out in the middle of the prairie, and I'd develop tools to evaluate view quality and solar irradiation and those types of things, and like combine all of them together and evaluate it based on the client's priorities. So like there was a lot of those types of like one-off things that I would build, and I think I was usually always just looking for a reason to build something new. I guess.
Did you find that building software was similar at all to building buildings? Is there a similar where's similar, and where does it differ?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some similarities. Yeah. I think, someone asked me recently if I missed architecture at all. And I thought about it for a little bit. My answer was no. I think primarily because I think what I'm doing in software is like, you can creating and solving problems. It's just, you're doing it digitally rather than physically. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that really attracted me or maybe like has dulled the blow of not practicing architecture is like I'm able to design and build without compromise. That sounds kind of bad, but like architecture, so many of my projects, I just remember like designing these amazing solutions, and throughout the life of the project, they'd get watered down and watered down and watered down until it was really just a residual of what the original idea was. And so I think that kind of like, and I think that's pretty common probably with architects in general. Like that kind of wears you down a bit.
So you have a little bit more agency or control over the final product, I guess.
That's good. Yeah. Yep.
So I guess you touched on this a little bit, but building software is kind of different than building design services, right? But what was behind your decision from doing this at your architecture firm versus breaking out and kind of starting a company on your own?
Yeah, so originally it really started as just, well, I'm going to build another solution to help solve a problem on this specific project. So we were working on the Nebraska State Capitol renovation. It was a massive project, a big preservation project, and we had to gather a ton of data about the existing building. So I think we ended up gathering like 40,000 interior photos of the building. We had to collect data points like what's the wall material on the west wall of Office 1220, and what's its condition, and is it preservation worthy, and all of these things we had to gather and kind of understand. And the team's approach prior to me coming onto the project was, well, we're just going to print out forms. We're going to jot down the answers as we go, and we're going to take our digital camera and snap photos. And then when we get back to the office, hopefully we can find what we're looking for, even though it might be months or years down the road. And so we didn't think that would work real great on such a large project. And so they kind of tasked me with finding a solution. I kind of went searching, didn't really find anything that was going to solve our problem. And so I ended up building a prototype that essentially allowed us to collect photos and this room, door, and window survey data on our mobile device. But what it would do is it would essentially connect it back to objects within our model. So once we went through the process of actually doing all the surveying, our team of 27 people across the 4 or 5 design companies that were working on this project had Revit and their field data up side by side. And as they clicked on an object in the model, it pulled up the photos and the data. And so it really eliminated the gap between like the information that we needed to design and the tool that we were designing in. And so I think like as we got into that project, the realization by me and others on the team were we're solving a lot bigger problem than just this project. And so then it was really just a question of, okay, do I want to kind of remove myself from the kind of traditional path of architect, career path of an architect, and go down this route, or do I just want to chalk this up as another nice portfolio win and move on to the next thing? And I think like for me, it was an opportunity that I kind of saw as once in a lifetime opportunity, and so I decided to jump in head first, and we rebuilt the platform from the ground up and launched to market. So
Incredible.
Yeah. So I guess like, can you give us a date on when you officially started Layer, and talk a little bit about those early days when your first foray into being a startup founder? I think for a lot of probably architects that are looking to make a change, one of the things they always wonder is like, what part of my architecture skills translate or don't translate into, say, being a startup founder?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So we launched back in 2019, and it was actually April. And I remember we had organized a trip to New York City, where I think we were demoing the product at like 13 different firms over the course of a couple days. And I remember thinking like, oh man, like 13, even if we get like 3 or 4 of them as customers, like that'll be a good day. And demos went great, got a ton of great feedback. Not one of them became a customer because obviously our tool was way too early and we needed way more feedback on it before we had a product that was ready for teams. So like I think like those learnings in the early days it was a rude awakening early on. And fortunately we really did kind of launch our product, a minimum viable product, as early as possible to get it out in the market and get feedback. And fortunately, a month or two later, we ended up bringing on our first customer, got a ton of great insight, great feedback, and that just continued. So what was the second part of your question, Lebo?
What part of your architecture training or your skills as an architect, how did they translate into being a startup founder?
I think like architects are generalists, or like we kind of have to be generalists in a lot of ways, in that we have to know a little bit about everything because we're the coordinating professional. And I think like those skills to quickly like gain at least some shallow knowledge or expertise about an area is highly beneficial to founding a startup, because when you're running a startup, especially in the early days, like your job is everything, from bookkeeper to customer support to developer to sales, calls, demos, things like that. So I think that's one area where like architect skills relate really naturally to founding a software company. Second is I think like being able to think critically about problems and solve problems efficiently is a huge skill in building a startup.
Yeah, it definitely resonate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I have a question related to the financing and funding side of a startup, because definitely if you have the skill sets among architects, I'm sure there are many skillful and talented architects out there who can code. But one of the obstacle is the immediate need of financing and funding. It's one issue when you are the one who are doing everything and you can just finance yourself for a little bit. But then once you start, it sounded like you had already some partners or employees that helped your work and build your company. So could you tell us a little bit more about that financing part of the business?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually were born out of the architecture firm that I was working at the time. So I essentially kind of transitioned my full-time work, and they essentially funded my work to go work on this piece of software. And in exchange, they were essentially co-founders in this effort. So it wasn't until 2021 when we raised our first round and spun out of that architecture firm. And so now we're completely independent of that firm. But at the time, like really, they bootstrapped us from the beginning. And I mean, especially for a mid-sized firm, it was a very brave thing to do. And it came with a ton of challenges. I'm making it sound way simpler than it was, but in the end, it was a super positive experience. I'd say like those that like want to kind of go out on their own, like there are a ton of great accelerator programs that out there that would be a great place to start. But before you really do anything, it's important to validate like the market, like what problem you're solving and how you plan to tackle that market. And with those details, then, you know, there's a lot of investors out there that aren't scared to risk money to solve a large problem.
You know, it's been a few years with Layer. You've expanded to, I think, not only architecture and design firms, but also folks kind of in operation. I think a theme that kind of repeats as we talk to different people is that our industry is quite resistant to change. And adopting new software is definitely not something that folks in the AC industry are known to be early adopters of. So I guess what are the challenges that you face when you're putting Layer in front of folks, and how do you take that into mind when you plan out new things that you want to build?
Yeah, so like I think one of the biggest challenges we face when we're approaching architecture firms is just time. Everybody seems to be strapped for time. Like our industry is obviously based on the billable hour, so it makes it really difficult and firms have to be super deliberate to set aside time for, you know, exploring new ways of doing things and new products. And there's firms that do that well, but I think in general, like that's one of the biggest things we run up against is people who are passionate about like finding better ways of working in a firm often are left to kind of do that in their free time when they're already pressed on multiple projects and
sort
deadlines.
of what happened to you, right? Like that was
Yes,
your
exactly.
your issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually while I was rebuilding the app from the ground up, I was still working on architecture projects, and I was expected to have a certain billable rate, utilization rate, and I think that's what we run up against a lot of times at architecture firms is the status quo costs us nothing when it comes to time, so that's what people revert back to until the pain is large enough that they need a solution. So I think for us, like one of the areas where we have found to be like one of the biggest motivating factors is when there's a specific problem on a specific project. Project teams tend to have some autonomy as far as the tools that they're selecting, at least in general. And typically they're trying to solve an immediate problem. And so what we do, we focus on solving that specific pain point on that specific project, on that specific project team. And then we rely on those team members who are now familiar in using Layer to take Layer to other projects to solve other bigger problems and expand within that company. So but time is definitely like the biggest battle that we're fighting. And I guess the status quo, like, well, we'll just do it with a spreadsheet like we've always done it.
How much of the, I guess, the tech culture do you feel like you're a part of? Because obviously you're working in AEC, you're working on buildings in particular, but you know, you have, for instance, you've mentioned you have investment, you have series funding. You know, I'm sure you're working, people on your team are not necessarily designers as well. They might be computer scientists, information technologists, et cetera. So how do you blend between kind of working on something that is very real and physical while also working within an ecosystem, which is much larger than your specific focus that encompasses kind of this huge kind of market for tech innovation?
Yeah, great question. So that's been, I think, a question that we've asked every single time we decide to hire for a role is, okay, what do we weight more? Do we weight architecture or design experience, or do we rate like the technical expertise that this position might need. So generally, like, our approach has been customer facing employees are people where we've prioritized, I guess, a background in architecture or a background in engineering, mainly because, like, our tool is highly technical. So um, uh, it's important to kind of know there's a lot that goes into the way that projects are delivered, as we all know. And so understanding that, we've seen as being kind of more important than maybe having the experience of doing customer success or customer support at another tech company. On the other side of that, on our development team, we've prioritized the skills in computer science and programming more than the skills in architecture, and mainly that's just because I'm a product focused founder, so I still do all of our prototyping and mockups, and kind of set the product direction for our company. So I think if that were not the case, we probably would, again, kind of rate what is more important, experience in the industry or experience with a certain technical expertise.
But it seems like, regardless, if you're dealing with the built environment, you need people who can speak that language, right? Who can translate the technology into the implementation, the solution, the effect that it's going to have, either within a specific firm or in terms of a general kind of market applicability.
Absolutely, yes, and that's where, like, it's important for the people who are training architects and engineers to understand what a day-to-day role looks like in architecture, and to know the ins and outs, because there's just it is really easy to oversimplify the way our customers work, and when we oversimplify, we miss major opportunities to solve pain points.
Yeah, I only bring it up because from talking to people in building tech, oftentimes they think that the tech culture can kind of dominate the startup or the organization.
Oh, sure.
And,
Yeah.
in tech, I always say, like, it's the difference between making a rendering and making a model. Like, in a rendering, you can Control Z, you can undo it, you can start it. It's not physically real, but when you're making a model, you actually have to deal with real world implications, acts of God, bad weather, people getting sick or hurt in the job, things like that, that just totally change the way we think about our work. And I think for me in general, like, thinking about how we can change the world around us, you do have to change your mindset. You have to have a very specific kind of agenda that I want to get this thing done in a way that accommodates all these sort of potential errors or potential kind of realities. But it seems like, Zach, that's definitely top of your mind, and maybe that's from your architecture background in particular.
Yeah, I think so. It's absolutely top of mind, with every hire we're making. So, and we're a bit removed from. So we're in Lincoln, Nebraska. So we're in the Midwest. There's a great startup community and culture here, but our team is hybrid. So we have employees that sit all over the U.S.
So as someone who, is bridging the middle, but also hires people from both sides, like, what do you find that each kind of culture brings to Layer that kind of gives Layer its own special mix?
Yeah, good question. So I would say, like, each side, like, we have some great customer facing employees who have experience in architecture and are highly technical and understand the highly technical challenges of delivering a project. And so what we try to do is we try to integrate, I guess, our team to a point where, like, those who may not have architecture experience have direct resources to go to understand why this certain issue might be a problem. And again, usually that's just a connection between, like, our customer success team and our actual engineering team, and understanding why processing the model a certain way is important, or why, like, grabbing nested families within a Revit family is important to quantifying FF&E or things like that. So I think, like, for us, it's been really beneficial to work together in a way that our engineering teams can rely on people with technical expertise in the industry to help with their day to day. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think maybe one thing is like we've I guess teased it a little bit throughout this conversation, but can you I guess give our listeners a pitch on what Layer is, and if they're out in the market, why they should go to Layer?
Yeah, definitely. So Layer is basically a platform to operationalize building data. So what it does is it connects to sources of building data like Revit, CAD, PDF, etc., and it allows you to build custom tools on top of that building data using our flexible no-code toolkit. So if you're familiar with tools like Airtable or Smart Sheets, you can think about us like in a similar vein, except with features specific to building professionals, generally related to like spatial tools like Revit, CAD, etc. So that's what we're doing on a daily basis is giving users the ability to build tools on top of their building data.
I have a question on the user side. So one complication or one kind of barrier that I see, I'm a developer, by the way, is like the architects are usually the more sophisticated ones who are software savvy, who uses the most recent versions of stuff. And when it gets translated to other sub consultants, like your MEP engineers, your civil engineers, whatever engineers that's involved in the project, they tend to use a way older version or an outdated way of drawing stuff. So that disparity blocks sometimes on the smaller project side that I'm working on. That even if I want to tackle and use the most updated software out there, there is this reality that none of the other subs are willing to learn that. Do you see that as also one of the challenges from your team, or are your software used only for the very large projects where coordination becomes even a worse nightmare?
Yeah, good question. I experienced that as an architect as well. I mean, I remember just wanting to do file sharing between consultants was a nightmare to try to adopt and get them away from an FTP site. So yes, that's true. A lot of times where like we're working with consultants or partners who are using a more outdated version of what we are, or maybe they're using CAD and we're having to link that CAD 2D drawing into our Revit model. And so like from the beginning, we've always been kind of about this, about basically taking an imperfect environment and working with it as best we can. So what Layer allows you to do is we're super flexible in how you can gather, collect, and organize information. So we have teams that will use Layer as a way to do programming before they even have a model. You can use Layer to connect data from that programming exercise as you start to develop an early version of a model. And if you have consultants working in CAD or even just sending you PDF 2D sheets, you can actually link all of those sources directly into Layer as well. And what Layer does is it connects. It has the ability to connect on all of those sources. So it doesn't have to be a model with a specific, level of development, or a CAD drawing. Like if you're working in CAD, you're only able to work in CAD. Now, there's actually quite a bit of flexibility around what you're able to integrate with Layer. And one of the benefits that we provide in a lot of firms is we're making a lot of this information accessible to people that wouldn't be able to access it otherwise. So, being able to access your BIM model or CAD drawings directly in your web browser or from your mobile phone, and allow you to actually then do something with it. I guess like backing up to summarize all of that, what we do really well is we make your data accessible and actionable from any device. So you can access the information, but you can actually then do something with that information.
I think that's so fascinating because, I mean, it answers, like, to Minku's question, the sort of practical dilemma when you have different people working on different softwares or different standards. But it also addresses this kind of cultural problem that we have within what we're talking about, people who are working on the built environment, where you might be used to one way of working just because you're that age. I mean, we're all a kind of similar generation, and I think it's probably no coincidence, Zach, that you started coding when a lot of people started coding, when we had the resources, the tools, the ability, and the need to do it, versus people who are maybe a generation ahead of us who maybe were at the only kind of really avant-garde when they started using 3D software or using even 2D software on the computer. And I find that, in my own professional work, when I'm working with especially consultants of different generations, like, we're working in Revit, but they're not. They're working in CAD, and I sort of can't blame them because they probably never had the experience. They never had the exposure to working in that. And like we talked about at the beginning, and I know a lot of us have talked about before, it's just a huge investment to maybe get yourself up to speed if you're not naturally kind of trained on that. So I think it's really interesting to see how software in particular can be used as a hub or as a way to connect those different cultural understandings or kind of abilities to deal with the built environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. And I think, following on that kind of like generational difference or gap, like, a lot of people were promoted out of the need to produce anything, produce
exactly.
drawings before we moved into BIM or, modeling. And so now they're at a point where, like, they don't necessarily have the ability to get into a model and review it. And so they require a project architect or someone else to go and export drawings so that they can go in and then do a review. And a lot of times, like, those are the types of problems we're solving, is we're making that information accessible to someone who wouldn't otherwise be able to access it.
I think many of us have been that person with the boss behind us saying, spin the model this way, spin it that way.
Yes.
I think you're answering a much more complicated problem, but I think that example kind of illustrates sort of what happens in a lot of firms where the boss knows what you're doing, but doesn't know how you're doing it potentially. And that kind of cascades across generation.
Yeah, I agree.
What will be an ideal setting to use layer, like, in the team? Like, for instance, would it be the most useful when people start using layer on the very early beginning when they're programming and thinking about, like, massing models? Or is it more useful at a point where you have your building permits and you're right before construction and you have these consultant drawings in different formats and you have this big team that now you have to manage together? Like, when would be the ideal timing for the team to adopt your software?
I think it totally depends on the work that the team is trying to manage. So through a project, like, the way that teams use layer changes as the project progresses. So early on, let's say, for an example, an existing building, before a model is created or any information is collected, teams will use layer to essentially create a building survey or condition assessment. They'll take it out on their mobile devices and start to snap photos, collect data, and all of that stuff. When they get back in the office and they start developing a model or drawings, that information, that repository of information, as that model develops and is connected to layer, that existing conditions data starts flowing into the model automatically. And so, like, you can use it to populate conditions data in your model. You can use it to create color schemes. So the way that teams are using it early on is very different than how teams in the middle of a design project are using it. Typically, in the middle of design projects, teams are using it for creating and collecting information for room data sheets, doing fixture, furniture, and equipment related work, and just general task coordination, where essentially you're able to connect individual tasks to locations inside of a model or over top of a plan. But then as you move into CA, you've shipped the drawings out and it's under construction. teams will then start to use again this database to actually do field and site observation reports, generate punch lists, those types of things. So it really depends on where a team is at in the phase of the project. But what is great about it is that as you continue to use Layer on a project, that repository of information becomes higher and higher quality. And at the end of the project, you now have a web-based database where all of this pertinent contextual information is connected to your spatial data that you generated. So that's probably a cop out for an answer to say that it's most useful everywhere on a project, but I guess that's my answer.
Well, I think also what's interesting is like it's almost like web is a new paper. Instead of printing to PDF all the time and then regurgitating those PDFs back into like a manual modeling process, you save that step by making the information available, right, and interactive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So in a way, like anytime there is some communication between those two parties, Layer could be useful.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
Cool. I guess, now that you've ran Layer for quite a few years and you've honed in your pitch, what is your favorite part about creating a product company?
My favorite part is, honestly, has been just creating something that didn't exist before. I think it's really cool to look back and see the impact that a product has had, even as early as we are. And usually that comes through customer stories. I get so much satisfaction over just looking at customer stories and seeing how Layer saved them time or helped them deliver a better project for X, Y, or Z reason. So I'd say like that's probably been the best part, the coolest part about it.
It's fascinating because I think a lot of people work either developers, architects, even people in planning would say that the best part of their job is actually bringing something alive that wasn't previously existing. Yeah. And yet, Zach, you're working in the digital space, but you're still feeling the same way.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, so that's a way that it's definitely similar.
Yeah. So this season our topic is on careers, and you clearly have gone off the traditional beaten path. What would be your advice to maybe someone like a young Zach who looks up, sees what you're doing, and wants to maybe take a similar path?
Yeah, I would say I would say first one, I guess, like developing the skills. And I don't think we've ever been at a time before in history where it's been there's been more resources out there for you to gain skills without going to traditional school or something like that. The advent of the internet made that way more accessible. And so I'd say like developing and honing your skills. But I think like one of the most important things that you could do is be like the skill you could develop is like being really in tune with how to solve problems and identifying problems. If you identify a problem and you identify a problem that's large enough, it
occupies a big need, probably, right? Like that's
yes. Thank you.
I think maybe there's some interesting there. It seems like, I guess for designers, right, everything seems like a design problem. For software engineers, everything seems like a software problem. So as someone who does both, when you do encounter a big problem, which side of your skill set is the hammer that you use the most?
Oh man, I would say probably both. Usually in how we're having to translate. Anytime we hear of a problem from a customer or a problem they're trying to solve, usually we're going to view that through the lens of, okay, what does this look like through the lens of our roadmap, and do we have something on the boards already that could help solve this problem, rather than just relying on the customer to tell us what we need to build. And so I think that's where I guess creative problem solving comes in, and like the skills that one might have as an architect to think about problems critically, is we don't necessarily just need to build exactly what the customer tells us, but take the shortest path to a solution through both, good design, but also good engineering.
Like it's a little bit different, I guess, designing software than it is designing a building or a space. If you design a building, it's pretty much done for at least the foreseeable future. But for you guys, you have a live product, I assume, that you will continue to adapt, and will continue to probably adapt to the world around us, both in terms of the market conditions, but also in terms of what customers need and what they want. How do you have any sort of roadmap established? How do you predict what's going to happen in the future, or do you just kind of go with it? You just wait and see what comes?
Yeah, we do have a roadmap that we build out. Generally, we're building out 12 to 18 months a roadmap in the future, but I would say almost always that changes based on market conditions or strategic decisions that we might make. But what the roadmap generally does, what we do is we're really deliberate about connecting feedback from customers to product ideas and roadmap items, so that we have a good pulse on what. So it's less about this is where I think we should go, and more about I guess an educated direction on where we should take the product. So we generally do have a roadmap 12 to 18 months out, but that rarely stays the same. And especially this last year is a good example of it, with the advent of AI, with what OpenAI did with ChatGPT and large language models. That's a major shift in the technology landscape. And so we would be we'd be ignorant to think that our roadmap should look exactly the same when we planned it in 2022.
Yeah, so I guess on the topic of the future, this is kind of our wrap-up question. What big future change do you see coming for the industry, and where do you see Layer in speeding up that change?
Yeah, I think what I'm excited to see for the AEC industry is I think in the near future we're going to see some upset of some major industry players. There's a lot of great new upcoming design tools out there, and I think the advent of AI is only going to accelerate that. And I'm really excited to see what comes in the next 3 years. But I think we're going to see a major shift in how we deliver buildings. And I think where Layer wants to be with that is we really want to be a home for your building's data. And so we're looking to integrate with as many tools as possible to make this repository of building information as high as quality as possible. So
fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. If our listeners want to find out more about you or more about Layer, where should they go?
Yeah, you can reach me at zach@layer.team. You can check out our website, layer.team. And we'd be happy to show you the product.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Zach, for your time. And thank you to our listeners out there. If you haven't already, please subscribe and follow and rate the Most Podern podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and soon to be YouTube, and wherever you listen. And we'll be back on our next episode.
Thank you.